all a persona that's not backed up by anything of
and
substance.
the fact that you don't play into it, people underestimate, like, my favorite, one guy mentioned that there was somewhere in Connecticut where you could see, like, dinosaur tracks. Like, they had made this whole park around these dinosaur tracks that you can go see. And then I was like, oh, do they have, like, dinosaurs there? And this guy thought I was serious. And at that point, you just double down, because it's like, we're not gonna have a good conversation here.
No.
Because you're treating me like a 4-year-old.
Because that's what he thinks of you, and that's also like what he thinks of himself. And I found that like I didn't like confrontation before, but having to like argue with like white men in Alberta about any number of topics made me confrontational. And then I just really reveled in it, and I figured like as long as, because I'm also, this is why I majored in comparative literature, I love reading, love researching, I'm just always reading something, so I feel like it's some lightning outside right now.
Oh, really?
T-dubs, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
lightning is the thing here. I've been seeing it a lot,
I
actually.
experienced that for the first time in Alberta because it's like straight up just in the middle, middle
Yeah.
of everything. Huge lightning.
Alaska
all the
has
time.
earthquakes.
Really?
I had no idea when I moved there.
I wouldn't have guessed.
I was teaching a class like 3 weeks in, and the earth started shaking, and I'm like, what is
We're
going on?
dying.
And my students were all like, is this your first earthquake? And I was like, yeah, obvious. Like, what? Is this something nobody told me?
I would be biking home at like midnight from my poutine job, and just like the most intense thunder that the whole earth would kind of shake, and then lightning that lit up the whole sky, and it would be thrilling but also terrifying. So I'm just biking home like like half laughing and half like, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
This is where it ends for me. So that was in but yeah, I think living there and having to like really stand up for myself, I found that I was able, if I just pushed back, I have a good memory and I can use the things that I've read in arguments, and men, especially straight white men, aren't used to like any sort of pushback. When they say something, it's assumed that like that it's true and that it's factual and that it's backed up by stuff, even if it's not, but that's how people take it. And so I had this guy, like, this whole conversation about like movies, and Moonlight had just come out, and I was talking about like with the 90,000 like superhero movies that are going on right now and stuff like that, like I worry that there's not enough space for stuff like Moonlight to come out. And then he started talking about, well, like explaining economics to me. He's like, oh, that's what makes the most money. And I was like, oh, is it what makes the most money? I was like, well, what was the highest grossing movie of 2015? And he was like, oh, it was Captain America. And I was like, oh, it was actually Hidden Figures, though, was the #1 grossing movie of that year. And he just said things like assuming them.
Yeah.
But I actually had like the facts to back me up, and he just like, well, he's like a white guy, so he just doubled down.
Yeah, that's,
And I was
that's
like,
what
cool,
happens
like,
is-
you're wrong, I'm right, I'm smarter than you. You have no research. You're boring and basic, like, you're not worth my time.
well,
Great.
people assert things, and you start out intimidated by it, then you realize, oh, they don't know, actually.
They don't know at all, but they're convinced that they know. And if I can make it my job to just like go bash some egos, like I'm all for that. And then that
I'm
coincides.
very similar. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is productive, but at least gets me through the
It
day.
gets me through the day, and
Yeah.
like, it helps because then I feel at least stronger in my own self, and kind of like the op-ed like assignment, like that if you're arguing against with something that you don't agree with, it makes you realize your own opinion more. But yeah, having to like deal with all of this all the time, and then being like, is this worth it? But I was like, but I would rather do it while I'm like white, going to grad school, drunk and angry, than like having someone else have to deal with this person later on. So if that's like my cross to bear, that I like am the one to poke, then like I don't mind that. And that coincided with like, I didn't go out in college at all. I didn't drink until I was 21. Like, and even then, like there's so many craft breweries in Oregon, and just because people are kind of just stoned all the time, it's like very kind of chill.
Yeah.
So just like go to a brewery, have like a beer or two, you'd hang out, and then you'd go home, but it wasn't like big party culture. And then, but in Alberta, I started going out dancing with my best friend Caitlin every weekend. And then I kind of experienced like going out culture, but like as an older adult and not like an 18-year-old. And I just had zero patience for it. And you just get assaulted constantly. 10 to 30 times a night, you're just grabbed. And I was like, oh no, I'm not having this. And so I just started like kicking and punching and elbowing in the throat back. And it was like really, really, like empowering is a word that like,
But
it's weird, but it was really good. It felt great. And I, all my friends that I made in Edmonton that I like made on purpose were all like punk musicians.
Yeah.
And so I just had this like, because Alberta and Edmonton in particular were so conservative, there was like a very strong punk underbelly that I feel like could only exist there. So you kind of dealt with the rest of Edmonton because like the rebels were so good because they had been bred in this system of like everything's like blue collar and like shitty and conservative, and so like that really thrived there. And so having like so many, just surrounding myself with like really creative musicians, everyone was a punk, everyone was tattooed, everyone was queer, and I was like, this is the best. Like I never want to leave. But then I had to go to grad school and come here, but like it was the best.
Yeah.
And like if I got to like elbow some guys in the throat at the bar, like during that, I felt great. Because again, in Eugene, that didn't really happen. Everyone was just like so chill.
Yeah.
So I never knew. I was like, well, what if something happened to me? Like I was always afraid that I wasn't gonna do anything. Like that was always my biggest fear of like if something really bad happens to me, like I would let it happen. And that's not to say, of course, that like people who don't fight back against abusers or assaulters, that's not like a bad thing, and that's a way to keep themselves safe. But for some reason, that always really scared me. It scared me more what my reaction to it was going to be than like the thing itself. But being put in a situation where like
you want to be polite.
And I was always like, and kind of like the one thing like that Lauren was saying a couple of weeks ago about like the State Department and like being told to like be quiet about things, and like those situations scare me in concept because I'm like, well, what am I gonna I think that I'm the person who would do something, but like, am I? And being put in those situations and then being the person who actually was like, hey, no, you don't get to like touch me. Like, here's a kick to the shin was validating. I was like, okay. I'm a strong person. I've like built the person that I am today on purpose. And like the work was worth it because like when put into like a fight or flight situation, I picked the situation I picked the response that I would have wanted.
How do you think that we can teach other people to do that?
I don't know, and that was my thing coming here. I know that we like kind of talked about like with the cohort thing, is I was just like ready to burn down the world. And I was kind of coming in here expecting everyone else to just be like a big like rebellious queer weirdo. Who was like, like let's fuck shit up. And then that hasn't been my experience here. Like, not that people aren't disrupting systems in their own ways, but it's come in a much more polite, respectable, white, straight package than I was necessarily expecting coming in. So that was, I think, something that's probably a lot of internalized misogyny and a lot of like just expectations I had in my own head of what it was going to be like, and more dealing with the disappointment of that not being the case than like the situation's not bad. Like our cohort isn't bad. It's just not what I expected. And so I feel like I'm having to do some like self-adjustment before I'm like actually judging others. So that's been interesting.
I totally didn't know what to expect, but I think that I've ended up like starting to dabble in sort of like more radical politics by myself, like not because of being here. It's because of like other relationships.
And that feels good to me, because even if we don't achieve all the goals that we're like going for, I feel like the ask has to be big, and the
Yeah.
ask has to be like radical. Like I really appreciated what Marcy said the other day about like how she is comfortable being in like that space where she's kind of the person who's like in the system making it work little by little, but that a lot of big changes do come from like really radical movements coming in and being like, no. And I appreciate both of those as legitimate things, and I think especially wanting to work in criminal justice reform, and then also wanting to focus on social admin, but then also wanting to be like a punk who comes in and like burns shit to the ground. Like I feel like those things are very precious to me, and I don't want to like get jaded or let those go, because even if I'm not going to be as much of a rabble rouser as, even if the system inhibits me from being as much of a rabble rouser as I want to be, I have to like go in with that intention.
Yeah.
Or else I feel like it's like, why do this?
Yeah.
Like you have to try.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would probably be, I mean, I've been keeping an eye on the clock, we're good. I think that's a very solid way to stop,
Okay.
right? I feel very empowered.
Yeah.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, that's great.
Great.
Wow, sorry, I feel like I blabbed. I'm a
That was the whole
blabber.
point. What are you talking about?
I don't know. One thing